Banana Slam Jam.
Okay. Sup, man? I know you just got up. Okay, wait. Welcome, guys. Episode officially number 2, or 1B. You know, other one was kind of more of an intro. But episode number 2 of BananaSlamJaron podcast. Here with my boy, Jaron. I'm slamming him with my banana. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so I know you just got off your game. It seemed like a rough finish. I only caught game 3, but how you feeling, man? How you doing?
You know, doing all right. We're still figuring out how we want to execute our strategies and everything, like the way we want them to go. Well, mainly against Quincy. Quincy is by far the best team that is like puts pressure on us really fast. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's how you learn, right?
Still figuring out like the just how everything works, really.
Right on. Yeah, I don't want to. I know you've probably just talked to your team a shit ton about your game, so we'll definitely just move on for you there. But so for everyone here, with the topic of discussion, since I'm casting a tournament, I figured a good idea is to talk about exactly why we watch Dota. So I guess the first question I would ask you, Jaron, is how much do you watch Dota? Pubs, like other people you're studying their replays, tournaments. How much would you say you watch Dota?
Well, right now I would say I definitely watch way more than I play. I watch well, honestly, the EU games that happen, I'm asleep for a lot of them. I do watch replays here and there, but I like to watch games live if possible. But I definitely watch a ton of pubs and stuff, and just like specific players to kind of see what ideas are going through people's heads right now, because obviously there was just a patch that kind of hurt a couple of our strategies on 4Zoomers, so we're trying to figure out like what our staple heroes and everything are. So I'm just watching a lot of different players and teams and ideas, and seeing, you know, just getting ideas on what other people are thinking, and how they're trying to execute their ideas.
How would you compare that to like when you're not on a team? Like say 6 months ago, a year ago, when you're taking a break? Is it way more now? Did you not watch Dota at all when you're off a team?
Typically when I'm not on a team, right now where I am as a player, I feel is I'm really trying to make my communication a lot more clean and everything in game, and talking about, you know, the next step and what we're supposed to do as a whole, as a group, like what we're supposed to do next. And that's kind of what I was mainly focusing on before 4Zoomers, after the Paris Major, when I was on Complexity. After getting kicked from them, I kind of like self-reflected on my time with that team, and I wasn't really satisfied with how I communicated and how I kind of talked about my power spikes and stuff like that on that team. So for, you know, roughly the year after Complexity, I was mainly just focusing on my own communications and how I approached saying things to people, and just trying to like do it in a more positive way.
Yeah. Okay.
And like that was mainly what I was focusing on when I was not on a team. But at the same time, there has also been points in my career where I'm not on a team, and all I do is watch, you know, a very specific 3 people. Like for example, when I first switched to offlane on Complexity in when was it, 2016? I was very, very new to the role and everything. And, you know, for sure I had a lot of help from people on that team. I had Moo, who just switched off of offlane to switch to carry to enable me to play offlane on that team. So I learned a lot from Moo, just talking to him like nonstop, basically. But I also learned a ton at that time period by just choosing 3 people that I wanted to mimic the playstyle of. And those 3 people at the time were Mind Control, Nine Pasha, and Universe. So basically, I would watch those 3 players in pubs and in competitive games, and I would just kind of watch their styles and their ideas, and how they would go about executing those styles. And you know, all of those players would have individual signature heroes that like you could really learn from, like mind control on Furion was just beautiful back then. I mean, I'm sure he's still insanely good on the hero now, but mind control in 2016, 2017, his Furion, woo! That was a mint Furion player right there, BSJ.
Yeah, I always try to watch the signature player whenever I'm watching a specific hero, right? Just because what they learn, however many games they've played, oftentimes when it's their signature hero, they've played hundreds, if not over the 4-digit mark of whatever hero they're playing. And there's just so much you learn playing a hero that you can never study, right? Like, nobody's ever going to figure out unless they just play the hero a lot. And it's not that you obviously catch up to them just by watching, but you get glimpses of what they have learned over time just by watching their perspective. One of the best parts about Dota, I personally, when I watch professional Dota, I watch almost always from player perspective, from one player's player perspective. And a lot of times when I used to like cast games casually or watch them on stream, people would always be like, BSJ, why are we watching the Faceless Void? Or, BSJ, why are we watching this one guy? And I'm like, well, if I was in this game, that's what I would see. I don't see the bird's eye view. It can be very deceiving. And I also think if they want to watch, the bird's eye view, hype casting, all that kind of stuff, there's always a main channel for it. So for me, that was always a big part of spectating games. And for viewers at home, I guess I would ask you, have you at all watched a game other than TI? We're not talking TI. Have you watched a game just for the sake of enjoying watching the game and you're not really trying to learn? Or are you just naturally in, how do I benefit from watching this game mode? How do I get better watching this game?
Which really is interesting because, like, I feel like Dota naturally is a game that you want to improve in because, as we talked about before, it is a really unique game, and there are so many variables and things to be thinking about, on so many different aspects of the game. So, I feel like the beauty of Dota is pretty much anyone who is still playing the game, like they're trying to learn from competitive players, right? Like they're watching with the intent of being like, oh, that's a really interesting idea or concept or whatever it is. But it really is something that all Dota players can kind of like connect on, if that makes sense, because like when you watch Dota, like it's hard to not learn from people that are better than you, whether you're intending to learn or not. There's always that aspect of better players than you. Like if you're just watching a player for 10 minutes and that player is significantly better than you, that you can infer so much information from those 10 minutes. If you're trying to, like not that you have to, but it's definitely something that's just really interesting with Dota because you can just always learn. There's never you're never gonna hit that plateau, right? Where like you can't learn anything
unless
anymore.
You're me. I'm just learning everything. I'm not interested in blowing the scene wide open with my newfound knowledge. Now I did something similar to you, where once I got done with Team Runes back in the day, that was my last team, obviously. I kind of went through this, like, reflective period of why was I as a player falling short. I'm a firm believer that if you're stuck in Tier 3 or Tier 2 Dota, something about yourself is keeping you back. I'm not trying to insult everybody in that spot, but I include myself, obviously, in that picture. And a lot of me, I think, was my one-dimensional black and white view of the game that I'm sure you're all too familiar with. But, don't react, just act normal. As I tried to open my mind up a bit till when I watch other players exactly, I don't want to say humility about it, because it's not, I always went in with the intention to learn, assuming they were better than me. But I went in with this, like, act like I don't know shit. Like, act like my bias towards this situation is non-existent, and what are they doing? What are they doing in this game? And that's the cool part about Dota, like you said, is there's just so much to learn. And even when you know something, the next patch might just change it. It's like, okay. And the funny thing is, when you see these, like, hero matchups and stuff, you'll be like, oh, I learned this 3 years ago, but now this patch, both the heroes are good again, and I remember that. So I think that's a lot about the aspect of experience that the tier 1 Dota players that have been playing for so long have. They do have that advantage. Is just the more patches you've played through, the more often you're getting a quick refresher course rather than starting from scratch. And for me, watching now, it's funny because as an analyst, I'm forced to talk about the game, right? So I'm forced to give like my detailed explanation of how I think the game went. And kind of like you said, like if you're watching with an intent, you will learn more. Like I've learned stuff even at ESL LA Online and Omega League that I just never learned from any other tournament, from any other situation, because I'm literally sitting here watching the same teams play over and over, like 3 best-of-3s a day. I'm forced to analyze like 6 of these games, and I'm watching the meta shift even so slightly every day or two, right? Because the team that wins, the teams that lose are going to naturally try to react to what they did, right? What did they do to win? And so for me, it's like, I present, this is why the team won, this is why I think the team lost, and then you get to watch the team that lost spend the next 2 days or whatever figuring out why they lost, and then come back. And that's the process that I think as competitive players we enjoy the most. And when I'm watching as a caster or analyst, I watch very differently just because I'm obviously getting paid to talk in depth, and I'm that's literally why I'm there. And for people at home, that's like what I'm trying to portray to them. And people a lot of times ask, like I even saw somebody already asking in chat or mentioning it, was we watch games, but I'm mainly watching it for entertainment because I don't even know what to look for, and so my question, I guess, like going off this miniature segue a bit, but like how do you know what to look for? Like put yourself in the mind of some guy who's played, is like 2 or 3K MMR or even 6K MMR, because I feel like, there's a large discrepancy between those players and the ones that have any deviled in the pro Dota. So how would you tell them what to look for? Where do you start, really,
So the way that and this is exclusively to me and like how I view Dota. I view Dota kind of as like a puzzle, right? Because there are so many different pieces to Dota and so many concepts and ideas and things and like what a certain hero does or accomplishes in the map, or what a certain hero allows you to do, or the way you want to play. And typically when you lose, you can watch the replay of your loss, and you can usually see the moment in each game like where things went wrong, and you can figure out why things went wrong and the reason why you got to that point to like enable the game to even go wrong. And a really important aspect of Dota to me is that you're able to learn from the mistakes throughout the game that kind of put you into a position that is punishable. Because again, the thing about Dota is the entire time that you're playing a game, and I'm speaking entirely from a competitive standpoint right now. Pubs are more difficult to kind of have this happen, but it's still doable, right? Pubs are still Dota. It's just really, really difficult to get 5 people on the same page, especially when you're not like all friends or whatever, because it's just Dota egos are just way too high. I've said it before. I'll keep saying it forever, but when you're playing a game, the way you have to look at the game is like, all right, how am I gonna force the enemy team to do what I want them to do? And that's literally what goes through every competitive player's head, is just how are we going to make this game execute in the way that we think is best? And whether that's sitting in front of a tower to enable your team to like TP in when the enemy team goes into and you're like baiting them into doing something, or whether that's you bring 4 heroes to a tower and you just want to force 5 TPs from the enemy team and then walk away. Like all of these small interactions are so incredibly they're all so incredibly important, because anytime like you force TPs, that opens up 70% of the map, because you know exactly where the enemy team is. Or anytime you invade a jungle, you know that you're benefiting from that because you're taking that jungle from them. Not only are you stopping them from farming that jungle, you're also farming that jungle. And all of these like micro wins in games are really a big deal when it comes to competing, because again, even if you're only getting, you know, 1,000 net worth every minute and a half or something, like you are consistently growing your lead to a point where your heroes in your mind are going to hit a power spike that is just too much for the enemy team to handle. Now, I'll try to finish this point real quick, but basically, as a competitive team, when you look at a loss of yours, you can usually determine like, oh, we made this play with this intention, but it didn't like we went beyond the intention. Like we went past our plan. Like maybe our plan is bring three heroes middle and force them to show 3 heroes to, like, you know, match our numbers. But we see like too juicy of a dive, so we end up diving that mid tower, and then, you know, they end up killing our 3 heroes that were middle, even though our plan was only to bring them middle, and then they get our mid tower because we overextended our strength, and we ended up feeding because of it or something. All of these like things, like as a viewer, you can just kind of look at 3 heroes go middle and die on like the dire tier 1 or something and be like, oh, this team's so bad. But like there really is reasons behind every single thing that goes wrong. And as a competitive player, you have to be able to know when you're pushing your ideas too far, you're pushing your strengths too hard, and you're not really being logical anymore about how you're trying to force the enemy team to play your idea of Dota. And when you overextend your ideas, you really do get punished. Like when you watch Team Secret, there has been too many times that I've watched Team Secret play Dota, and they're down by like 7,000 gold, and all they do is like camp a ward on a high ground, and the enemy team walks into them, and Team Secret just executes so beautifully that they just win a team fight when they're down by 7,000 gold, because they know that if they just camp this high ground and position in a very specific way, when the other team walks into them, they just win the fight, and it's over. Like the fight is just theirs, and they are so confident in a lot of those ideas, and they're just so perfectly executed every time, and it's like that's why people love watching the best of Dota, because you see these players that just perfectly execute every single time, and it's fun to watch, because you feel like you're just watching good ideas get executed perfectly, and it's a good feeling. That's why TI2, for example, was such a hype TI. You would just see these Darkseers, Nagas, Enigmas, Tide Hunters, and you would just see all of these wombo combos happen to perfection. And as a player, or even as a viewer, you're just like, wow, I want to play Dota. That looks so cool and so fun. Like, yeah. And yeah, I think it's just something that people don't really give competitive players enough credit for in this game, because you'll even see a lot of the like maybe the ideas aren't as perfectly executed in like tier 2 or tier 3 Dota or whatever, but like even these worst players, like it's great watching players improve and like realize where their errors are and everything.
I think the main point I want to draw from all of that, which just like I think there's, I obviously was listening, but it's like one thing I really heard, and I was seeing what the rest of it tied in so I could move forward, was when you watch, which I think this is something I watch for too, but very few people realize, is that there's a lot of shit that can go on in a Dota game. You know, like so many decisions to be made, and a lot of people ask the general question of map awareness. You know, like how do you know what the opponent team's doing? And the only answer, honestly, the key to map awareness is understanding how your actions impact the opponent, and thus taking actions that give them choices, right? Like they're forced to make a choice. And if they have to make a choice, suddenly you're only thinking of maybe 2, maximum 3 options that the opponent team could do. And your map awareness turns into, okay, which one of those are they doing? You know, and then all you have to look for is signs of which one of those 2 or 3 outcomes is going to occur. So when like I watch professional Dota now a lot of days, and I'm trying to learn a hero, I think a really important aspect that even like really new players could watch for is when this guy pushes a tower, when he pushes a lane, when he ganks a hero, what did the opponent team do? You know, what did they have to do? And, like, when the opponent team reacted, then what did he do? Like, was it a dive tower, it forced TPs and back off? Was it a dive tower, you know, force TPs but also go for the kill? Because it's like, then you can say, oh, like, he dove the tower, and then instead of backing off, they kept diving, and then they died. And then you can also learn from those mistakes, right? Because maybe the play was good, the idea of, like, you know, forcing a reaction, but then when you force it, you're supposed to back off. And that's like, all these interactions are very repetitive. They happen in almost every single game, but it's so different based on whatever hero is doing what, whoever has what net worth, whichever team's ahead, you know, specific levels. Like, there's just so many little factors that can sway these decisions that what I love about watching Dota is I'm just like, why did that guy do that? What did the opponent team have to do? A lot of times I'll even put myself in the opponent team's perspective. Like, I'll literally move my camera to the opponent team and be like, what did they see here? You know, oh, you know, why did they do that? And so when I hear you talk about all the good things players do, the way I look at Tier 1 Dota, honestly, for Dota players, is it's literally fucking Hollywood. It's the movies. Like, what would take the average person playing Dota, you know, 12 takes, you know, 12 cuts of the same scene, like, to get it perfect? The Tier 1 teams are just doing it perfect, you know? And then, like, the only reason the bad guy, you know, the other team, quote-unquote, wins a fight is because they outsmarted you midway through the movie, you know? And then then you come back, it's like, the thing I hate about watching Tier 2, Tier 3 Dota sometimes is because we all have to learn certain mistakes and learn from our own mistakes and go through the same process. And I'm watching the Tier 3 team make a mistake I've already done and learned from. And I'm like, you know, like, I know exactly where this is going, you know? It's like, fuck, you're watching a movie with a very predictable ending, and you know it's going to result in some guy embarrassing himself, and that's the feeling I get when I watch it. And sometimes I know I'm not the best caster for Tier 2 or Tier 3 Dota because I'm just like, yeah, they're going to fucking lose. Like, if the game's not out of proportion by 10 minutes, like, this team can't win. And then at the 10-minute mark, I'm like, now what? You know, the game's over. Even though it lasts another 20 minutes. And for the average viewer, they'll just see, like, the one team with a 1K gold lead, and they're like, yeah, they're fine. It's a close game. And it's like, sometimes a 5K gold lead is less impactful than a 1K gold lead. And I think that's one of the funniest things about watching Dota is it's like when you're watching basketball, the team's up by 5, they're up by 5. Like, that's literally, they're up by 5. But, like, in Dota, the kill score, the gold count, it's up to interpretation. It's fucking like math combined with literature class. You know, you have to not only read the math numbers, but you also have to, you know, dissect the meaning of the sentence. It's like, Jesus. Go ahead.
Because, like, to add on to that, you really do have to look at so much more than just net worth and you know, just where heroes are playing, because, you know, map control, what towers are alive, hero matchups, like, all of these things just become so relevant. And even if a team, as you said, is 5,000 up, you know, 5,000 up can literally mean nothing at times, because, you know, maybe you have a 2,000 gold on your carry and, like, 1,000 gold on your offlaner and 1,000 gold on your mid. Like, all of that's just unused gold. So, like, even though a team is up by 5,000 gold at some point, like, what really matters is if that gold is spent and is actually in a hero's inventory. Because, like, there's been so many times where, like, I see a super late game of Dota, and, you know, I'm talking 50 minutes in or something, and a team's up by 15k, but they have 4,000 gold on 3 heroes. Like, are they really up by? I mean, sure, maybe they have the buybacks or whatever compared to the other team, but, like, if that gold isn't actually in your inventory, like, it's just gold. Like, there's not actually much there.
And some items mean a lot more than others, right? Like, sometimes a 2k gold item at 12 minutes can mean way more than a, you know, even a 5k gold item at 20 minutes. Like, it's like every item has its own importance and significance that like you said, it's not enough to just see the number. And that's why when, like, as an analyst and somebody like yourself who has a high understanding of Dota, when we see those numbers, you know, it's not black and white. We always see this, like, okay, now what does that mean, this specific game, and why? And a lot of the times what I realized is if I come to a game, so I want to implore people, if they're watching Dota to learn, when I come to a game and I just show up to a pro match and I watch these 10 heroes clash it out, my retention from the game, like what I actually learn from the game, I would estimate is like 1/3 to 1/4 as much if I watch the draft pick for pick, thinking about exactly why each team picked each pick. Because in the highest level especially, but it still applies to Tier 2, Tier 3 Dota, most picks are picked in response to something that is already seen, whether or not it's on your own team or whether or not it's on the opponent team. The pick order matters. Like, why did they pick it? Did they pick it to counter something? Did they pick it to synergize with something? What did they ban in order to protect it? You know, all this kind of stuff. It matters so much to the actual game that when I study the draft, because I'm forced to as an analyst, I've realized this now, I understand the game just so much better. I understand so much about what went wrong in the game. My predictions are way more accurate. Like, I remember there was one game we had some issues or whatever, and they threw it to our draft panel to analyze, and it was eight picks in. It was 8 picks in. And my interpretation of the draft was just so bad. I was like, wow. I watched the game play out, and I was like, yeah, I didn't understand shit. And then, and it was because I wasn't watching the whole time. So as somebody watching, I would just implore you, if you do care a lot about learning from competitive, I think the draft, if you actually care about learning, even though it may not be the most glorified part of the game, the draft is so fucking important. And it'll help you understand player matchups and hero matchups, because if you see, hey, this hero got picked in response to this one, that's easy study material. You just know, watch the game to see what that hero does to the other one. You know, like, where is the positive interaction of why they would pick this hero? Was it counter initiation in team fights? Was it superior split pushing? Was it objective taking? Was it initiation? You know, like, whatever. So I just think that's funny.
Something I just want to add, I don't have much to say, just something I want to add on is, it also could just be they feel that comfortable on the hero. Like, take Liquid from TI9. They're in grand finals against OG, and they're just first picking a TA every game, or it was like TA or Tide. Like,
it was TA, yeah. They were undefeated with Tide throughout the lower bracket. They were like 6-0, and then they lost with the first 2 games or something, and then they gave up.
Yeah. And you know, they get to the grand finals of this tournament. No other team is doing what that team did, but they accumulated so much confidence throughout the tournament. They're just like, yeah, this TA is just slapping. Like, we are so confident in this. Like, just go own them, Weeha, and they just take it. And it just goes to show you really how much goes into the team dynamic, and just, you know, having players trust their teammates and like just believe in themselves. Like, what all of these other teams do, while it does matter, and you have to look at it on how it does affect like each team individually, like as a viewer, but like you really do have to admire the amount of that just like absolute trust all of these top tier players have for each and every one of their teammates. And they're just like, yeah, we're gonna do this, and like we're either gonna win with this idea or we're gonna lose with it, but we're gonna win or lose like just being us, being our team, and like just committing, you know. And it's all interesting. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, let alone the fact that you could have the same 5 heroes be played by 2 different teams and it would look completely different. That alone tells you how complicated Dota drafting is. You know, it's like if 2 players just build different items on the same hero, then, you know, the game looks completely unrecognizable. And the funny thing to me is, you also mentioned items. Somebody in chat made a good point. Is if you're up by 5k gold, say you're a tier 2, tier 3 team, especially, you're going to be more likely to do this. You buy the wrong item. You know, you buy an item that's not ideal for that game. Suddenly that net worth lead is a fraction, just, you know, whatever fraction that may be. It's inefficiency. It's a % of inefficiency that you invested in an item. You know, it could have been you bought a heart instead of a Scotty. You know, similarly priced items that give some health, but, you know, you didn't build the right one. And that's the kind of stuff where whenever I'm like ahead in games, oftentimes I'll look at map movements if there was any particular map movement I made that was really bad, or I'll look at an item build. One of the two fucked the game up. Like that's almost always. There's obviously exceptions. It's not that simple, but like when I watch these games, it's like either the team didn't push their advantage properly, like they didn't go for the right objectives in the right order, or they'd like I just look at one of their items and I say, wow, he thought that was going to help him and it just didn't. And you don't know until it's too late. That's the beauty of Dota. It requires foresight. So when you're watching, you can like practice, that foresight. What do I think this guy is going to build? Why is he going to build it? When he builds the item, if I wasn't going to build it, what does it allow him to do? Maybe I was planning on playing the back lines of the fight. Maybe I was planning on going second, but he goes first in fights. A lot of these little things add up. And like you said, there's always the little things. There's always something to improve on. And I know every podcast, everyone so far, we've talked about how enthusiastic we are about Dota, but it's like...
but it's the truth.
Yeah, when you watch, it's like every time I gave you a general subject that we were going to talk about this week, but half these points I'm just like feeding off of what I thought about when you mentioned what you watch for. It's just crazy that half this stuff's just in the back of our fucking heads. It's like, yeah, I just love watching Dota for that reason. And at the same time, though, I will say I get incredibly burnt out at events. Like I'm like, holy shit, I want to play. Like I'm actually want to play. After the day's over, but my brain is just like, okay, BSJ, you've had enough fucking Dota today. That's enough studying. So when you're watching, just as my segue to ask you, when you're on your team and you said you're watching a lot of Dota, is that a lot to do with why you don't play as many pubs, or what's like? How does that affect how much you want to play?
Yeah, so something I have noticed about myself is that basically when I'm competing, because right now I would say on average any day that the Zoomers have a match, we probably spend, I would say, at least 8 hours every single day that we have a match, either doing lane practice, talking about drafts, watching the series before us, or whatever it is. We're spending about 8 hours talking about / playing Dota, and it takes a lot because basically my point here is that pubs, you can just mindlessly hit that find match button, and you can pick whatever hero you want to play, because the public matchmaking for all pick is very very different from competitive Dota. Like you're not necessarily getting the 1-for-1 counter in certain areas of the draft, and now you're blind picking on the same pick as the other team, and pubs really don't embody drafting of competitive Dota at all. At least in I mean, maybe like a little bit, but it's very, very different is my point. And but with pubs, you can kind of just go into a pub with the idea of all right, what am I setting out to learn right now? What am I trying to learn a new hero? Am I trying to master this hero? Am I trying to have a better understanding of Bat Rider, or am I trying to practice my micro so I pick Brood, or am I trying to understand the timings of Viper better? Just random heroes. But in pubs, you can always just kind of be like, all right, what am I going to get out of this pub? How am I going to go about becoming a better player from this pub? And when it comes to talking Dota with your team and everything, and doing lane practice and stuff like that, so much thought and precision has to go into everything that you do as a team, because everything you do as a team it's all going to affect each and every one of you, and you all have to have a very similar understanding of like most heroes in Dota, because if everybody has different ideas of what each hero in Dota accomplish on a team, your gameplay is all over the place. You're just so you're so sporadic and so just hectic, and just you have different ideas, and you're trying to play for different timings, and you're just doing different things. And when that happens within a team, it's just really, really bad. But anyways, back to your point, usually after I do these 8-hour days of team practice and stuff, it's just an entirely different game when you go from that style of playing Dota, of like everybody is on the same page, playing for the same thing, trying to just like play good Dota together. And then you go to a pub and it's like, you know, you have your offlaner diving their tier 4 towers because he's a Wind Ranger and he's like, I can't get attacked, woo! And then, you know, you have your safe laners trying to defend a tier 1 tower against 3 enemy heroes that are, you know, now TPing to their tier 3 towers to try and stop this dive. And it's just like, pubs are just so hectic. So like you typically can't focus on the team aspects of pubs. You can only really focus on you and what you can do to create as positive of a scenario as you can in a pub. So whether that's through communication or, you know, farming really efficiently, getting to a certain timing and, you know, making the correct play, or, you know, whatever. It's just pubs are just erratic, and competitive is much more calculated, forethought, as you said, just a lot of just clean play, if that makes sense. So,
I think the beauty of pubs, to tell you, is that you're forced into situations that your team would never pick. Whether that's good or bad in that specific instance, sometimes it forces you to, like, that skill of, let's do the best I got with what I got. You know, maybe, and then you learn something. Sometimes just some random combination that you're like, oh, huh. And then it, you know, then it works out. I didn't want to interrupt you too hard there, but I wanted to say, like, that is an aspect of pubs that is chaotic and hard to adjust. I definitely remember that feeling of going back and forth between Team Dota and pubs, but I think pubs they're the playground, right? Like, they're the time where you just build a sandcastle and see what it looks like at the end of it. You don't have no idea what you're doing along the way.
What was it, a week ago? I was just playing CK offlane like every game for 5 games, and I you know, just testing random shit out, just seeing what my initial feelings are on that. You know, not like, I'm not gonna go into specifics.
Tell us
about
exactly
it,
how you feel about that hero in this meta, Monkeys, and how it pertains to your team strategy.
But just I'm just pointing out that, like, pubs really are just like about you creating your own opinions on Dota and, like, your own ideas, and, like, seeing how matchups happen or interactions happen. And then, you know, competitive, that's really where these individual players come together, and, you know, someone will bring up a hero and their team is going to be like, oh yeah, that sounds great, like, I see how this game is going to play out if we do that. And it, again, it just comes together, and it's a great feeling when it comes together, basically. And I've spoken about this countless times on my stream, where it's just competitive Dota is what I love the most. Whether it's watching competitive Dota or playing competitive Dota. I mean, I definitely prefer playing, but my point is, competitive Dota is just, that's where you really see just everything about Dota come together. Because and I don't want to go down that line of thinking again, because, again, we've done that every week, but it's just in competitive Dota, you really do, that's where you see players shine the most, in my opinion. When you really, like, look past just the surface of the game, and you go in depth, and, like, you start to really understand just how much time and work and just commitment all of these players have put into the game. And it's so cool to see, man. It's so cool to see.
Yep. When I see situations I've never seen before, and I'm like, what do they know I don't? I love watching those games, and it really does increase my enjoyment and appreciation for the game itself, as well as the players. It's like, you know, out of all the random combinations and permutations of heroes you can put into a group of 5, they've experimented with this one thinking it had a reason, and here we are. The funny thing about Dota, right, when I watch Dota, is I love making really bold assertions to myself. So, like, an example of this in this tournament was, I played against Gunner Mid, okay? You may have heard of him. He's pretty trash, but sometimes he wins pubs. He played against me at the very start of 7.27, all right? And he played mid Doom, and I counterpicked him with Razor. You know, nobody knew what was good in the patch yet. And I was like, I know Razor's good against Doom, and I shit on him in lane, because, like, not fair to Gunner. It really wasn't fair. Like, Razor shits on Doom. And I look at, like, I was, like, 2 levels ahead of him, or, like, a level and a half at 5 minutes, And I didn't feel like I could do much. He just maxed Scorched Earth and pushed out the lane, and I couldn't, like, even static link him long enough to do any damage. And 5 minutes later, he had Phase Drum Midas and was, like, 2 levels ahead of me. And I was like, okay. So I played against that, and I was like, okay, I really don't think I could have done anything there. And so I picked Doom mid for, like, every time I was forced to go mid now, I'm like, oh, that's a mechanically easy hero. I can't play mid. I'll just fucking play Doom mid. And I won, like, the next 7 games of Doom mid. And I was like, just copying what he did, pretty much. And I was like, okay, this shit's broken. And then I see it in competitive where people start picking it first round. They're putting it offlane a lot. It's not having the best success. And the last 4 Dooms I've seen at this event are mid. You know, like, by like, Team Liquid and stuff. Like, they're running Doom mid. So the funny thing to me is when I play against stuff, when I watch stuff, I really like to be like, yeah, this is going to fucking work. No, it's not going to fucking work.
Yeah.
And it for me personally, I get a lot more enjoyment out of that. And I also, like, I get satisfaction when I'm right. I get slapped in the face with a lesson when I'm wrong. There's really no negative there.
Or also just, like, it's also just fine. It's just fun making overconfident statements, especially to, like, your high MMR friends and stuff. Like, for example, when we watched the grand finals of TI8 together, I think it was game 4 of LGD OG.
Yeah.
And I saw those 2 drafts and I was like, there's no way LGD loses this game. Like, I was so convinced that LGD, like, even if they messed up play, I was like, LGD is gonna win this game. And you're just like, fucking man, I believe in OG. $20 right now, and I like.
I forgot about that.
We didn't even have to do that, but it actually just added so much hype to the game. Even though, like, I mean,
are you encouraging gambling? We don't have any sponsors yet. Wait till the sponsors, man. Fuck.
I mean, I consider $20 on, like, you know, a grand finals of a TI, like, not really like a crazy amount or anything,
know,
but it just, like, I liked it a lot. I just liked it a lot because we like, you, even if it was a meme at the time, which I'm still not even convinced if you actually believed in OG or if you just wanted to disagree with me, but, like, it was just like, it just added so much fun just, like, watching that game with you and just, like, talking about each aspect of the draft, like, as the game was going through. And, like, I remember LGD hit, like, a 15k gold lead, and you even said to me, you're like, ah, damn monkeys, looks like I'm gonna have to go get on panel soon. And you literally left this, like, you stopped watching because you were convinced LGD were gonna win, and then OG makes the craziest comeback ever, and I was just like, no. Like, I could not believe my eyes as OG was winning that game 4. And again, it just goes to show that, like, these teams know what's happening more than anyone else. Like, you know, me and you, we can make as many predictions as we want, but, like, OG, they never stopped believing in their draft. They never faltered. They were just like, this is what we're gonna do. We have buyback on honor, or, like, you know, we're gonna bait here, or I think that was the game that No Tail literally walked his 10 creeps down the middle lane to, like, delay 2 creep waves so backdoor protection would still be up and they wouldn't lose. Like, there were just so many random aspects to that game that, like, I never would have even considered before seeing it. And it was just like, how are OG doing this? How are they just defying all odds? Like, it was just really, really cool to watch.
Yeah, that's obviously the hype aspect of Dota, right? Like, those are the moments that, like, you know, 10 years from now, no matter what we're doing in our life, we'll remember. And those are few and far between, but at the same time, it's like you live for those games, right? Like, it's just like in pub. Sometimes you'll go through 20 shitty games in a row, and then there's just that one game where you're like, God, that was a fucking awesome game of Dota 2. And that's honestly why I compare Dota to poker so much. It's kind of funny. I'm going on a very small tangent here. But there's just, like, a lot of games where you're like, been here, done this. Like, let's hope for the best. And then there's other games where you're like, how the fuck did that just happen? Like, the odds of that are insane. You know, like, that's why I compare it to poker. It's just, you know, crazy hands that you're like, there's no way that series of actions just occurred. But with Dota, I get the same thrill out of watching it, where, you know, the gambling, the the notion of that where you're just like, there's something on the line for me watching, even if it's not money, right? You just make this strong assertion that something's going to happen in this game. And I, as a panelist, have purposely become very polar with the way I talk about teams because, you know, people like to laugh at me when I'm wrong and they like to pog champ when I'm right? So it's like, or, you know, shut the fuck up, BSJ, and all that other stuff people say in the Twitch chat when I'm casting. I live for that kind of stuff. I think it's very enjoyable as a person to watch, like myself when I'm watching the game. It makes it more enjoyable for me, and I think adding that bit of storyline to the game itself where it's like, hey, this is how you're told the story's going to go. It's like, imagine if you're watching a movie, right? And you're like, I'm told this is the plot line. I was given a summary on Rotten Tomatoes, and then you watch the movie, and it's like at halfway through, it just goes, you know, way to the side. That's the unique part about watching esports is not only are you watching like everything unfold just like a normal sports game, but you're also getting to watch a lot of it from each player's perspective. You're literally looking through the eyes of the player that's playing the game, and that's just a unique experience in and of itself. So to about wrap it up, because you know we want to make sure our content is not we don't run out in like the next month. My last question for you would be, what's the last game that you watched where you just learned something and you're like, wow, I can't believe that just happened? Or like you don't necessarily have to tell like all the details about what you learned, but if you can think about it, like watching Dota, this lesson you learned, you're like, whoa. It could be very specific about a hero.
I would probably say watching the EG vs Alliance series where they were like picking Arc Warden for Arteezy a lot. Definitely learned a shit ton about Arc Warden as a hero from watching EG specifically in that series because I don't want to go too into specifics,
don't ruin strategy stuff.
But if you watch that series, if you like try to think about like the thought behind what EG is doing in those games, it actually it really shows you so much about just how to play the map with an Arc Warden, and it really like it was an eye opener for me specifically, but I think a lot of my team also valued those series or those games because the EG is just so systematic in that series, and it's cool to watch. If any of you have not seen the EG Alliance series in Omega League, Immortal Division, I believe it was in the group stage, but that was a very, very solid series to watch if you're trying to understand Arc Warden.
Yeah, I did a recent series that I was don't even remember if I was casting, paneling, or whatever, but I was forced to watch it, okay? And it was a game where Sven, I think it was actually EG as well, and it was Sven super farmed. It was actually on EG, the Sven was, or the team I'm talking about, and they were ahead by like 3 or 4K gold to like 17 or 18 minutes, and the opponent team just tried to fight them all the time, and I was just like, why is this opponent team that's losing trying to force fights nonstop? And after the game, the team that was forcing fights, it's VP versus EG. That's what it was. They had Ursa against Sven. Yeah. And so I was just like, and I watched this game, and the Ursa's fighting with a Midas. And I'm like, okay. And I had an idea behind it when I was watching, and I was like, yeah, okay, I think like he bought a Midas because he thinks he needs to scale, but he also wants to fight, and he knows he needs to fight. So, you know, there you go. And he can, since he has a Darkseer, he thinks he can fight with just a Midas. Either way, I watched this game, and I'm like, you know, this really puts in perspective for me teams like VP where I'm watching it and I say they're losing, but they know the only way to make it better is to just literally fight 99% of the game. Like they would die 2 or 3 times and they'd just run it back. You know, let's do it again. And that was just a constant brawl where the team that was winning, EG in that case, they were up by a significant margin, ended up losing the game because Sven, even though he's winning, he wants to turn that lead into more farm. Like, that's what Sven's going to do. He gets 4 slotted before your carry gets 3 slotted. And I just think that that's the kind of thing where I'm just like, all I have to do is ask myself, what's the optimal play at this given moment, man? Because even though I know we're losing, I feel like I watch VP and I'm like, they know it's not going to get any better. They know the Sven's going to out-farm the Ursa. And that's the kind of stuff that I love watching Dota, because I was just so shocked at how often they are forcing fights. And for me as an NA player, I hate to say, you're, bred to, or nurtured to literally just hit creeps until you think you could fight again. So that aspect of Dota for me, watching these EU games, even playing some of the pubs these are in, has been quite an eye-opener for me. So glad. I think this is an interesting topic that I thought was very relevant for me personally, watching all the games recently. And it was good to hear your perspective, because you're obviously on a team now.
Yeah.
I know you can't see my face, but I'm dipping my head a little bit in solemn sadness.
I'm sorry. Don't worry, you'll bounce back.
You're like, oh, and I'm like, I know he can't see me, but
I truly wish I could see you though, because I feel like I can react to like your facial expressions.
Yeah.
If there's a way to figure that out,
I think it would have to be something to do with like, I'd either have to like not be streaming with my webcam that day or something.
Or maybe you could just like share the Discord screen or something where both of our cameras would be on.
Oh, okay. Maybe. You know what? I'll think. I know what you're saying. We'll go for that next time. But before we talk about theoreticals, we'll wrap up this session so people on YouTube are like, "What the fuck are they talking about?" Yeah. So yeah, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for session number 2. Hopefully. The plan is we did have a few people join the Patreon, so we do have a few questions, I believe, submitted in one person with a potential clip. So the goal next week will maybe be to have a bit of a dose of that. And in the future, monkeys, I know you're nervous around individuals or people in general, but we're going to try to have some guests.
All right, I think I can do it.
Okay, just, I'll let you know 4 weeks ahead of time, monkeys, to make sure you don't break down. But yeah, so that's going to be the plan moving forward, guys, is every week we're going to have some topic to talk about like this. Hopefully, or not hopefully, the plan will be that part of the podcast will be a bit shorter, and the rest of it that adds up to about the same amount of time as this week will be that. So please check out the Patreon if you're at all interested in being a part of that. And this is always on YouTube. So if you guys missed this session, it's going to be on YouTube. When I get back from this event where I'm not, busy as all hell, I'm going to worry about trying to put this on Spotify for you guys and any other platforms that might be relevant. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Any last words, monkeys?
No, not really. I think I actually was thinking about last words like 5 minutes ago, but it's gone, so
yeah.
I'm good. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
You all.
I'll talk to you soon, monkeys. See you later, bud.
Sounds good, man. Bye-bye.